Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, December 29th, 2022. And today we are joined once again by Clark Taylor along with Anthony Ricciardi. And today we have a special guest from Take It to the Table, Ignacio Pinalez. How are you, Ignacio?
Well, Bene, a man can only take so much. So for the past 3 days, I've been hearing you all bury the Judgment Day. And I'm like, okay, that's okay, because they don't know any better. They don't really know what's good or whatever. Let them talk. And then I hear other comments. My jaw dropped, my ears exploded, and I soiled myself when I heard that Batista was a bigger mainstream star than Stone Cold Steve Austin. I finally said, that's enough. I got to come on the show and just set the record.
For those of you guys who don't know what he was talking about, the other day there was a discussion and there's some controversy about what was exactly said. But it was basically, what Clark meant to say was that Batista is a bigger star in Hollywood than Stone Cold was. Now, he might have said mainstream star. Now, that's where the divide is, whether or not he said mainstream or Hollywood. But Clark, do you want to explain your point about what you originally meant?
I'll start with he's correct. If I said mainstream, I'll admit I'm wrong. That's fine, no problem. But then this became a thing that he had to turn it off. That just seems like a remarkably petty deal. We're on the same team. We both are Wrestling Republic guys. I watch all of his shows, respect Ignacio immensely, and have often stated, if we meet, end up on the same show, I think we'd be friends. I really respect his work. I want to put that out there first. Now I'll say this. It did seem a little weird, like I kind of want to get on the show. You know, to attack that, it was such a throwaway statement. I did preface it with, if I'm playing devil's advocate. Now, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And it's fun. It's fun. That's the fun of this. And the net of it is, at the end of the day, unless you're a diehard Longest Yard fan, where Stone Cold was a great supporting actor, and you look at the work that Batista's done in Marvel movies and the amount of money that those movies have made, realistically speaking, Stone Cold's not being auditioned for leading roles, supporting roles, any roles in those movies, in fact. Net worth, no argument. I have no arguments to make. The first time I saw Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestle, he wasn't Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was the ringmaster. It was at WrestleMania 12 against Savio Vega. Savio Vega put him in the $1 Million Dream, or Savio Vega was put in the $1 Million Dream, and he went out. That's the way the match ended. That's the first time I saw Steve Austin wrestle. He's accompanied to the ring by the $1 Million Man. I'm a lifelong Stone Cold fan. I want to make that clear. I have seen him wrestle live on numerous occasions, and he's arguably my favorite. I go, he's in my top 5 of all time. This was not a statement that I was trying to be even controversial with. I was playing devil's advocate on crossover stuff. The Hollywood thing, if we want to talk about that, I'm totally with it. But I'll absolutely say Batista, for what he did in a short period of time moving to Hollywood, Stone Cold had to put the work in for 30 years to get over the way he did. And if we're going to do this discussion, I'll back Batista on this one. I do think he's the bigger Hollywood star.
What do you say, though, back to the original comment which Ignacio shared, where you said he was the bigger mainstream star? Would you agree with that statement, or would you say the Stone Cold is the bigger mainstream star?
I think Stone Cold having his own television show and the level of viewership in the Attitude Era lends to it that's hard to beat. It's hard to quantify, right? If we're talking about who made more money in entertainment, the answer is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who's the more successful actor? It's probably Batista. If you look at movie for movie, it's probably Batista. And I think it's a more nuanced conversation than one that requires two sides. And that's why I'm also a little bit confused about the argument in the first place. I just, it was pretty simple thing I said. I thought it wasn't like I wasn't trying to call Batista a bigger deal than Stone Cold by any means. I'm just saying, arguably, Stone Cold's not getting leading roles in Hollywood. He's not, right? He's not getting supporting roles in Hollywood, and that's fine. It doesn't make him less successful or lesser than Batista. I wasn't trying to say. I mean, by the way, if we can have that rivalry back right this second, you're looking at one of the biggest fans in the world. I'd love that. Be amazing. Stone Cold versus Batista. If they could book that for Mania, I'll tell you what, I'd be there. And I will anyway, but I'd be all over that matchup. And I think I'm as confused as anybody, by the way, on this one.
Well, what's your response, Ignacio?
Well, going back to the initial, and you can find the letter, Ben, and maybe replay it on the next episode to prove that I'm right. But so to me, the biggest mainstream star is meaning that more people know the name Batista than Stone Cold Steve Austin, which is 100% not a fact and not true. Now,
wholeheartedly agree.
Now, Stone Cold Steve Austin is the biggest. Arguably him and Hogan, the biggest persons ever to come in the wrestling business, but the biggest
Rock
superstar to come out of the wrestling business, or probably Rock and Cena. Now, if you're saying that Batista is a bigger movie star, Stone Cold Steve Austin said he doesn't get roles because he doesn't.
Longest yard, it's great.
He said on his podcast, I don't know, maybe Sasha Banks was the guest, I believe, because they were talking about her deal with the Mandalorian and stuff. And he said that I didn't like movies. I'm not doing them anymore. He realized he was a shitty actor. And by the way,
they didn't make any money.
By the way,
totally with you, but
Batista,
I wouldn't call him a shitty
Rock,
actor. I thought he was good.
Rock and Cena, they're all the shits. All their movies are the shits. Wrestlers can't act. I don't know why they try.
He's remarkably negative. I think they're some of the best actors in the world.
Rock takes money, bankrupts production studios or whatever, and I hear he single-handedly sent DC in a downward spiral.
DC was
no HBO deal.
DC's been wrestling up long before The Rock was in anything in the DC stuff. They have not been able to do anything. Yeah, let's look at the Flash movie that still hasn't been released. Oh, that's right. There were so many problems with that. Rock had nothing to do with that.
Well, if you're gonna go, who's the bigger actor? Out of them, they're all the shits. They're all terrible, and But it's mainstream, like people, within my inner circle, I have friends and family. They're hardcore wrestling fans. There's some that are casual, and some that they don't watch it. But to the ones that don't watch or casual, Stone Cold from the Attitude Era, and I used to watch it back then, and I don't anymore for whatever reason. Or Stone Cold from the Redneck Olympic show, whatever that was, that used to air on USA after Raw or whatever. Yeah. But you say, Guardians of the Galaxy, and my favorite character is Drax, and Batista, is real good at that role. Who? Batista, the wrestler? Yeah, the guy from Dune. What? Who? Yeah. Austin is a bigger, quote unquote, mainstream star.
I hear you, and I love the personal experience, but as a kid who lives in Southern California near Hollywood, we know a lot of actors. And so my personal close circle would absolutely know who Dave Batista is. I'll tell you that much. But I hear where you're coming from. So I think it's an age thing as well. Yeah, maybe it's an age thing. I don't know.
You have to look at the age thing. The kids that are watching Marvel movies now are probably more inclined to know who Batista is, as opposed to if they don't watch wrestling. That's what I'm talking about. You're a wrestling fan, you know the name. You know both names. Austin's the bigger name in the wrestling circle. In mainstream, I don't know if it's still the case that Austin's the bigger name to a non-wrestling fan. Because the Marvel movies are generating billions of dollars. So I don't know.
If you ask anybody under the age of 23, I think they're honestly more likely to know Batista than Stone Cold, purely because obviously, Batista was around when they were watching wrestling as kids. Compared to Stone Cold, who wasn't at that time. So I think it really does depend on who you ask. Whereas if you ask somebody between the age of anybody over the age of 26, 27, I think it's more likely they'll know who Stone Cold was. And your good friend Saul Ignacio has commented.
What's he saying?
You see what I have to deal with on Take It to the Table.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand.
And one more thing, by the way, because I don't want to spend too much more time with this. I know you guys want to talk about other things. But by the way, Clark, I have invited you and Kobe onto the show before. It's
okay.
It's Chaos's show.
I know.
I've mentioned on a couple of episodes, like I want one of them to come on the show to justify, like, you guys do ratings and you guys do it somewhat of a good job, but I mean, justify like a lot of the phoniness of and we're gonna get into it later, I know, with the Young Bucks and the leg slapping and all that bullshit and everything. So I have invited you onto the show. It's just
okay. I appreciate that.
I have to deal with like Soul and Chaos on a week.
You got to run it up the chain of command. I respect it, Ignacio, and it's all love here. I want you to know that, by the way. We're on the same team here. We're both Wrestling Republic, and absolutely. So I do absolutely appreciate that.
Well, there we are then, guys. So let's move on to the next topic now, and this one was a bit of a weird one last night at a AAA show. Dragon Lee defeated FTR and became the AAA Tag Team Champion. And this caused a lot of confusion off the bat because he then did a promo where he basically just went on to say that he was about to leave AAA because he's going to WWE instead. Then, in something which WWE have not done in I don't know how long, they did an article on the website about the AAA show and hyping up the fact that Dragon Lee is signed with the company. And Triple H also did a tweet. The NXT Twitter account did a tweet. And they are really, really hyping this man up. And that is, he's a tremendous talent, right? I saw him for the first time when he was about 23 years old. And he really is. Like, he's worked for CMLL, AAA more recently, New Japan Pro Wrestling. He worked there as Ryu Lee. And, of course, Ring of Honor as well, where a lot of people know him from. And he really, really... top talent, 27 years old. So like we were saying the other day about WWE wanting to sign guys under the age of 30 purely because, they want them to go on the main roster before they're 30. So they'll have, longer time to develop to become a star. So yeah, he is officially signed with the company. Now, Anthony, I know you've seen, you've watched a lot of Ring of Honor and stuff over the years. What's your thoughts on Dragon Lee signing with the company?
I've always liked Dragon Lee. I always thought between him and his brother, Roosh never really did anything for me, but Dragon Lee was the guy when I thought, yeah, this guy can make it on a major stage, whether it's WWE, AEW. I always thought he was the better of the two. I did not see the signing coming. I assumed he would probably went to AEW with Roosh. Apparently they didn't sign him. So it's going to be interesting. I don't understand the logic, and it's not even just AAA, but any company. If you know somebody's leaving, why put the belt on them? I don't get that at all.
Yeah, that was certainly the confusing thing coming out of it. They literally had them beat FTR, who are now, I don't know if Dax, in one podcast episode has started rubbing people the wrong way, but seemingly they wanted to take the titles off FTR. And they gave it to somebody who's leaving the company. But perhaps there is a deal in place with WWE where they'll say, Dragon Lee can work in a few matches, drop have a small title run, then drop the titles. And yeah, maybe AAA see that as a better draw than FTR holding the titles, which I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I see, but it is what it is. What do you think, Clark?
So I totally agree with you on the putting the belt on him thing. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I honestly, my biggest follow-up, I don't have a great necessarily take on other than that. I agree that Dragon Lee is the standout between him and Roosh. And I think it's amazing that he'll be, going to WWE. I think he's going to be great. At the same time, I also think, so you have Dragon Lee and Roosh as a team. They win the titles. Does this mean FTR is not going to appear in AAA more often? The Soul Sessions, obviously, Soul just commented there. And that would be my biggest question, I guess, right? Because I don't know the answer to it. But does this mean that we're not going to see any more or not in the near future FTR in AAA?
Or even AEW stars in AAA?
It's in general, that's possible too. Right? As you see in the comment, But that would be my biggest. Is I have more questions than I do answers in this one.
Absolutely.
Right? You know.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Ignacio?
Well, I think as far as the tag team titles, I think they wanted to get them off FTR quick, fast, and in a hurry. And I think we don't know now why, but I think maybe within the next couple of weeks we probably will know. But I mean, those titles are as insignificant, just like the IWGP tag team titles are insignificant in the world of wrestling as anything else in tag team wrestling in general, because tag team wrestling generally has been non-existent in the past 10 to 20 years of any interest or main event stature. So it's no big deal. The titles mean nothing. Dragon Lee, I've seen him wrestle in the independents before. He's made the loop around Texas. I've seen him a few times in independent promotions around, Houston, the Rio Grande Valley, Laredo, and ROH as well. He's nothing special. He's flip-flop artist, cookie cutter, just like anybody you see on Rampage or Dark or Elevation. He's not going to be making a significant impact in WWE. The first mistake he made is I want to be the next Rey Mysterio, or hope to be the next Rey Mysterio, which is that only worked once, and it was lightning in a bottle, and you can't recreate what Rey Mysterio did for the industry, right? The ultimate underdog. And in Conan, Conan said this in his podcast in K100, K100 Keeping It Official, is that he if you guys want to make it in WWE or AEW or North America, you have to learn English, because you got to cut a promo. He doesn't know English. Andrade is trying, right? He's learning the language.
Do we know he can't speak English?
Yeah. I mean, probably very broken English, but I mean, you have to be good. You have to be able to cut a promo, and
Ignacio, right? Obviously, a second language does make it always harder too. So, like, you know what I mean, right? Like, I agree with you on that, right? That does make it way more difficult. But at the same time, like, I guess I'm more curious. Do you not see the bell to bell talent? Because I do. I get where you're coming from, the flippy thing and whatnot, but I feel like bell to bell, it's pretty hard to deny how athletic and talented this dude is.
No, I mean, it's just like I said, he's cookie cutter. There's 1,000 of these guys out there, and he's just another one that wears a mask.
Fair enough. I was just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I'm glad for his family, because he's going to be making better money than he does working in Mexico and in the independents. And
that's awesome.
I'm glad for him. But if he makes it to the main roster, he's definitely be making serious money. But he's not going to make any significant impact, and he's not going to be a ratings draw, or when they come to Texas, South Texas, where he's more popular in the border of Mexico and stuff.
Southern California, even, right, as well. Yeah, right, near the border of Mexico, where you get crowds like at San Diego. I bet he pops too, because I've seen him. I've gone down to San Diego to see him wrestle before on the independents, and he does get a good following down there as well, which I love those crowds. They're amazing, and same with South Texas, by the way, for reference. I love all that kind of wrestling crowd and the Lucha Libre spirit and everything. I find fascinating, but I do hear where you're coming from on the language barriers. It makes things infinitely more difficult.
Yeah, he's not going to make a significant. He's not going to main event WrestleMania or even get close to there or anything. So
I think it's a little too early to say that, because we haven't seen what WWE wants to do with him yet. I don't think you could flat out say he'll never main event. Hunter apparently is behind him based on the tweet. There's simple solutions with the language thing. They can easily give him a manager. It's not that complicated to have a mouthpiece. Plus, he's in the best place to learn promos in the PC. So I think it's too early to say he's not going to do anything on the main roster. He hasn't even gotten there yet.
No, he's not. He's just, you can put, look, who are you going to put with him as a mouthpiece? If Selena Vega, okay,
wouldn't be a bad call.
She's the best other than Paul Heyman, which that would be an odd pairing, but not going to happen. But
could be fun though.
Let's say you put Selena.
You could put him with MVP. You could put him with a number of people that could talk.
MVP is not a bad idea either, by the way, too, with the, he's got almost, then you get kind of you can play off the big man and the little guy type thing on the way up, maybe, Dragon Lee versus Axiom. That would be outstanding. Yeah,
That's
Oh,
huge.
God.
Right there.
huge
Makes
A
me
Kid
get,
fan.
just hearing that match gives me gas.
Really?
I think it's a you problem.
See, I was wondering. So Ignacio, are you anti-Axiom? Is that why?
Absolutely, I'm anti-Axiom.
Why? I think A Kid was a terrible name. I think Axiom's not great, but I think he's an incredible talent.
Again,
I mean,
it's more
him a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt submission artist that bell to bell can do stuff in the ring that other guys truly can't.
Well, now we're getting into kind of NXT, like that's the school. So I don't know if Axiom, I was not familiar with him, what he was in Independence. Was he Axiom in the
He was
Independence?
A Kid. He was A Kid.
Or they just throw a mask on him.
Yeah, they threw a mask on A Kid, unfortunately, and he also has the language barrier issue. He's from Spain.
Okay.
Spanish is his first language, and but he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a trained MMA fighter. He's got a move set that is, when it comes to grips and arm locks and working a limb, as good as anybody I've seen up and coming. Now I understand charisma is a big deal and getting character over it, but to write off a talent like him is that's why I'm curious. It seems like a reach there. Like, he's so young as well, mid-20s. And again, also trying to learn the language.
So this is the thing, is that, and it happens with Ricochet also, is that Ricochet is a hell of a worker, but when you put him, like when that other match he had with Gunther was probably the best match I've ever seen him in.
Oh, it's amazing.
But you put him with Dragon Lee, or if you put him with a Kalisto, or you put him with another flip-flop acrobatic flyer, they're going to do a spot fest.
It becomes Cirque du Soleil. I hear you.
They're not going to have a wrestling match. So that's
I hear where you're coming from there. Yeah, it'll be Cirque du Soleil, right? Flippy, 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 and then I hear you. I totally hear you, but at the same time, the level of submission aptitude that you see with Axiom is off the charts. The guy knows, you talk about like Dean Malenko, 1,000 holds. Your mic's muted, Ben.
Yeah, he's technically amazing, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't know if you've seen like his work, A Kid's work in NXT UK in the what's it called, Heritage Cup, but technically he was so sound. Like, when we have Kobe back on tomorrow, he'll be able to tell you about all the NXT UK work A Kid did, now known as Axiom. But truly, he isn't like some, flip-floppity wrestler or whatever. He's technically sound. And I'm going to be honest here. I don't know if Dragon Lee's on quite the same level as that. But Dragon Lee is technically sound as well. His work in the Best of Super Juniors years back, I think he was 24 at the time, if I'm correct, maybe even 23. But when he was really in the Best of Super Juniors, his matches really, really impressed me because they were, so technical and stuff. And it was just, I'm quite a big fan of his. Do you have any come back to that, Ignacio?
No, I just don't think he's going to be anybody of significance that's going to make an impact on the main roster or in the company in general.
Okay, and I'm not even trying to be that guy, but who do you think will then?
In NXT?
Yeah.
I think Carmelo Hayes has a lot of potential.
Huge fan of Mello myself.
I think Julius
Great
Creed has
friend
a
of the
lot
Republic.
Potential. Julius Creed. I think the Creed brothers in general have a lot of potential. I think Braun Breaker's going to be a star. I think he's ready now.
I totally agree on Braun. I almost think pairing the three of them together on the main roster for we presented this yesterday on the show.
But yeah, not Carmelo, but
what would you think about
brothers
Breaker with the Creeds against either Brawling Brutes or Imperium on the main roster to kind of start a rivalry? I think we could see some serious matches, and I think the mic work would make a little bit of sense as well. With the you have the American grappling based guys versus the British on the side of Imperium, the British, the ring general, the British strong style technical type of wrestler. So it's catch wrestling almost versus freestyle and folk style. I think there's some kind of juice there, on that one.
Well, this is the problem that they have. And I think this is the problem that they had with Karrion Kross is that, like 300,000 people, maybe on a good night, 400,000 people watch NXT. not everybody that watches Raw and SmackDown watches NXT anymore, or maybe never did, because Raw and SmackDown do triple the numbers, quadruple the numbers, quintuple the numbers, whatever.
Quintuple,
So,
yeah.
whatever.
National TV,
So
so you really can't compare it to
only a quarter or a third of the Raw and SmackDown audience watch NXT. So Hunter or whoever makes the decision to make these call-ups expect the fans to know who these people are, and they don't. And I think that's what the issue that Karrion Kross was, because Karrion Kross re-debuted, and they re-debuted him on top of the card with Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns, and everybody's like, isn't this the guy that came out in the terrible BDSM demolition mask? And why?
That's on Vince,
why do
not
we give
Hunter.
a shit?
But do you not think
Vince's
this
booking?
guy?
Do you not think the gimmick works with Scarlett?
Come again?
Do you not think the gimmick works with Scarlett, with the entrance and all that goes into that? Do you not
I think that works, but I think it was the way they debuted him, and they put him with Drew McIntyre, and he didn't come across a winner in that feud. I think they needed to smash him over, give him some undercard guys to run over, then some lower mid-card guys, build him up, making him a monster, then put him in that feud with Drew, then have him go over Drew. And before that, do about a month of vignettes to build these guys up, so to introduce them to the fan base that doesn't watch NXT or doesn't care about NXT.
Now, Ignacio, I love what you said about vignettes too. I brought that up the other day. I do not think they've done a great build on a debut on the main roster in a while when it comes to vignettes. And I think it's an underutilized. I totally am in agreement on that. You gotta, even if it's a surprise, right? Like the Jericho's debut back in 2000, was it? With the countdown, right? We didn't know it was Jericho. Not everyone did or whatever. I was young enough that I didn't know, but it was internet enough that some people did, right? There were Jericho signs in the crowd when he interrupted The Rock and the countdown finally ended. But there's something to the vignette that you don't even know the result of. And that's something I don't think that the WWE uses as often as they used to. I really like where you're going with that on the vignettes thing, for sure. For main roster call-ups.
Yeah,
that was one of the things during the late 90s, the Jericho thing. Edge, you knew nothing of the character. He was just rampaging through the streets of New York. He was a mute for the longest time. Val Venus did promos. They did a lot of vignettes, and that is probably a lost art. Like the only person that was doing, they're sort of doing that with the Edge vignettes that they've been doing, the return stuff, but they really should be doing it for debuting stars.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it with Gargano. They didn't do it with Bronson Reed.
Absolutely.
They didn't do it with Loomis.
All surprises.
I don't think Loomis
exactly
needed it
right.
in fairness. I don't think the way they did Loomis was fine.
No, but to Ignacio's point, and I've actually made this complaint. It's funny off air, Ignacio. It cracks me up that you're saying this. I made the exact same point to Kobe and I think Anthony and Ben on a Zoom call the other day during Raw. I go, it's been a lot of just shock out of nowhere debuts.
Yeah.
There's no context. There's no why. There is a why, I guess, in theory from a storytelling perspective, but there's no build to it. There's no feel of like, it's just for a shock, one pop, and then you have to go from there. And I really like where you're going with that. I totally am in agreement with you on that.
And then look at the other side. One of the best things that and they haven't done very much good things lately, but one of the best things that AEW has done was last week, because nothing was said about him this week, but they did that vignette promo with Hobbs, and I was like, this shit is fucking great. What?
It was good.
How long it took them 2 years to do this, and it's just who's responsible for this? Because this guy needs to do this for anybody they want to debut, homegrown or not. That's the way you tell a story, somebody's background story, and tell them why. I think they went a little overboard, but anyway, it was good, and it introduced them to the fans. Why should we care about this guy? And at the end, I'm setting the AEW on fire, whatever he said at the end, but it was good shit. It's just like, I was thinking that they were getting the guy that's responsible, that's debuting for AEW in their production, might have had something to do with that, but I don't know.
He's not started yet. He's starting next week.
Well, whoever did that segment, that series of vignettes, they need to give him a raise or let him be in charge of producing.
Let him work more
in those. Let him work a lot. Put that guy to work because that was tremendous, and
excellent.
that was something that WWE was known for back in the day. I'm talking back in the 80s. Is they were good at introducing superstars or up-and-comers or people that were coming into the company, like the old Ted DiBiase and Mr. Perfect and vignettes and stuff that they did back in the day.
Even Razor Ramon, early 90s, right? They were amazing on the Razor. Remember the Razor vignettes are some of my favorites, right? The old school. It's Tony Montana. Like, it's classic. They're amazing.
I don't know if they're getting lazy or Triple H just assumes, well, everybody's going to know who they are because, you know, they were on NXT. And
in fairness, to play devil's advocate here, Vince got a lot of stick off fans in the last couple of years for doing vignettes. Vignette debuts. Admittedly, they weren't very good vignettes. You can say that too. But Vince got a lot of stick for doing vignettes over surprise debuts of fans because people like it. It's taking the fun out of wrestling by announcing when they're arriving and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, Vince had a handle on a lot of things that went terrible, and that's not only with the vignettes. But I'll say this. I'll branch off. I don't know how much we time here, but I'll branch off a little bit. Is that another thing? I'll go back to Karrion Kross. Is that I think as far as the minute and a half, 2 minutes that they give him is very, very good. He's been doing very, very good promo work and acting and building his character. But I think for so many years, because 3-4 years ago, Raw was like unwatchable. Like I got sick watching it, and it was terrible. The background segments that they did up until, maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, it got better over time, but it was still bad. But I think people have just been preconditioned to watching crap on Raw that they don't realize that something is good when they see it. And that stuff with Karrion Kross, the vignettes and the promos that he does is good, but they don't know it because they've been watching turds for the past 3 years.
Have you heard about MSG? About the fact that they were allegedly chanting boring throughout the Cross match?
Yeah, I've read something about that, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you reckon that that's maybe an indicator that they need to switch up where they're going with the Karrion Kross gimmick?
That could be a combination of a lot of things. Drew Gulak, that's a match that should have been a squash match, and I don't know how long it lasted. But do you get the timing on that match? If it was longer,
no, I can't find it for you now.
I think yesterday someone said it was like around the 10 to 12 minute mark, by the way, but don't
long.
quote me exactly on that. Yeah, no, but I do believe we did look it up yesterday, Ignacio. Not 100% on that, but I think it was around 10.
That should have been a 3-minute match at max, and then Kross should have smashed him over.
I hear you on that. Choked him out unconscious,
yep.
right?
Yeah,
logically.
So I think that was part of the problem. Part of the problem is they went in after the ladder match. So that was an issue, and Karrion Kross isn't experienced enough to lead a match, and I don't know if Drew Gulak is either. To tell you the truth, he's a great technician, but it's the blind leading the blind. So it could have been a combination of things, but I also know that just from reading on stuff that a lot of people aren't sold on Karrion Kross, and I think that's the reason why is they look at his promos and his vignettes and things that he's been doing in Scarlet, and they just don't know when something's good when they see it because they've been watching ridiculousness. They've been watching guys throw pancakes in the air and out of their pants and riding unicorns and people jumping out of cakes, and they're like, well, this shit, fuck it. So that when they see something good, they don't know when it's good.
And it's hard to also recover. We all remember the bad outfit from Kross, right? I'm actually a fan of him and Scarlett pairing and all of that. But to your point, people don't forget. We all saw him wear the outfit. I think he called it a gimp outfit earlier. That cracked me up. I love that line. Right? It is ridiculous with the suspenders. It looked silly. And the gladiator helmet, it was just goofy as could be. Not my cup of tea. Not even on the docket, on the list of teas for me. It's not good. And I think that is one of the hardest things to navigate in wrestling is when you have somebody so talented, so physically talented, so all of that. All of a sudden now he gets not buried intentionally, not at all, but on the internet, based on the reaction to what happened when he did all that stuff. And then you try to bring him back what he was before. And it's like, well, we all know better. Even though we're lifelong fans, even though we've watched it for our whole lives, we do all know what it really is. And it's just, okay, they repackaged him as what he used to be, kind of. I'd almost be curious to see what would happen if they were to give him, and I don't think separate him from Scarlett, because I think she makes the act.
The one
just some nuance. Yeah, Anthony, sorry, go right ahead.
The one concern with him with Scarlett, and it reminds me of a Mark Marrow Sable situation, is Scarlett going to be the bigger star between them?
Yes.
That's the problem that they have to worry about if they really want to keep them as a package deal. Scarlett may get more over than he does.
That's a really, really good point, Anthony. Like and I didn't even really consider it that way. I wonder if that's why they kind of tried to debut him without her, and then maybe thought bringing her up later may have been the long-term plan at the time, right? I'm recklessly speculating here, right? Like, I can't think for other people.
Apparently, Vince wanted her as a wrestler. He thought she looked too good to be just a valet.
Well, he did the same thing with Sable.
He said the exact same thing about Sable in the 90s. It's Sunny, for that matter, by the way, I think.
But anyway, let's move on now, right, to the other company, All Elite Wrestling, who had their final Dynamite show with their current branding and production team last night. I thought it was a great show, and I'm critical about AEW quite often, but I thought it was a really good show. I thought Ethan Page and Bryan Danielson kicked it off with a really enjoyable match, and they had the tag match between Top Flight and Claudio and John Moxley, and I loved how they finished it with the uppercut. I thought that finish was fantastic. And then they went into the best of 7 series, which is something which I was very critical about when it started, because I said, why would I want to see the same match 7 times? Like, it just didn't really have any interest to me, and I was proven right quite quickly that I just was not interested in it, up until they added the stipulations. And I truly thought that last night's match was a real banger between them. What did you think, Clark?
So it's funny. Early on I'm a huge baseball fan, right? I'm wearing a baseball t-shirt right now. I'm a huge baseball guy, lifelong fan. And I love the 7-game series and the World Series, and then the divisional, right? Like in the, the pennant, everything. I love the idea of the 7-game series, and then the drama it brings, because while that games 1 and 2 and 3, you cannot win the series. They're so important. And then the natural build, it's like a sports story that tells itself, right? And I even suggested to Anthony, you can confirm this. Did. I said, I think they go Red Sox, Yankees 0-4. And they have a 3-0 lead for Death Triangle. They didn't go that far. They may have gone Cubs and the Cleveland Guardians in 16, and given us 3-1 lead that they have to come back and tie the series. But I do, as much as there's some predictability to what happened, and I will also agree with your sentiment about the first few matches were slower, right? But that's also like the first few games of a baseball series. They're gonna slower. Game 7 is always gonna be more important, more tense, more anxious than game 1 and game 2. And I agree with you on the stipulations being added. I thought last night's match to tie the series, to do it, and the finish, the tease of, oh, wait a minute, in the ring, Death Triangle might retain, and then they got undercut by the stipulation on the outside. I thought it was fun booking, and now I'm going to Dynamite January 11th, so maybe I'm biased on that, right? I'm excited to see the ladder match. I think it's gonna be, live wrestling is live wrestling. It's great, right? I'm just appreciative to be able to do that. And so I was totally satisfied with the way that they played that out last night. And not only that, I think it made more sense of stuff that I would have criticized in the beginning of the series in the past. And that, I think, was the most impressive thing that they did last night to me.
Ignacio, what did you think of it?
Well, every other show, Chaos and Soul, have to hear me say that I think that these 6 individuals are the most detrimental thing to the wrestling industry today. And they're all here in one match, and we've had to see him 5-6 weeks in a row or something. Putting just for a second, putting my feelings aside about them for a moment. The thing that made that everybody thinks that was so special about the Young Bucks and Lucha Brothers cage match was that it had been a while since they made contact, right?
I remember because I was there.
A year and a half. Well, I'm sorry. But
Apology
now
accepted.
they come back a year later and now I got to watch this shit 7 weeks in a row. I was there in San Antonio last week for that embarrassment with the Christmas tree and the elf running around the ring and Kenny Omega paddling, prancing around the ring. And then, so I'll give them this. The first 2.5 minutes they had me because I was like, oh shit, this looks like a fight. They were fighting like it was a street
It was a
fight.
brawl.
Like,
I like that.
And I like the fact that the Bucks and the Elite, that they were wearing street clothes and like a street fight. And they looked kind of ridiculous because they were wearing the white belts and the skater shoes or whatever. But I mean, they were street clothes. And they had me for the first 2.5 minutes. And then Pac does a flip up. And I said, I'm done with this. This is ridiculous. The Bucks have embarrassed tag team wrestling for the past 10 years. Penta and Phoenix are legends in their style of lucha wrestling, and they need to keep it over there. And Pac, I couldn't be more disappointed in him being involved in all this bullshit. And it's just, I'm tired of it. I don't want to see it anymore. They invented these trios tag team titles to feed their egos, just like Dusty Rhodes made the 6-man titles back in the late 80s because he was the booker and he said, I need to be a part of the show for us to draw money. So I'm going to invent these titles and tag team with the World Road Warriors because they were hot. It's the same concept and it's tiring. These people are embarrassing and I don't care to ever see any of them again.
What did you think about the finish, though? The finish where it looked like Pac was going to win, but then elsewhere in the arena, Kenny Omega actually won. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it's terrible. Everything's terrible that these people are involved with.
Do you just not like it because of the people, or if you broke down the booking? Let's put 3 guys on one side that you like and respect, and then 3 guys on the other that you also like and respect, and then the finish happens the exact same way. Do you feel the same?
Well, okay, real quick, let me revert back to. I'll go back to something Dax Harwood mentioned on his podcast. I'm not saying that these guys are bad people or bad fathers or bad husbands or anything like that. I'm just saying that they're bad for the wrestling business and they shouldn't be a part of it. Now, the finish, I don't like the match in general. It's too much hoo-ha and too much to follow and here and there and everywhere. But I guess I just don't like them so much that I just don't want them to be around the promotion or in this business. It's hard for me to take myself out of it.
I understand that. So I guess I would say this then. Would you have preferred, from like a 6-man tag perspective, would you have preferred earlier in the year, they did the Bloodline main event 6-man tag against Riddle and Orton and them? Did you prefer that, or is it trios that bugs you? Is it just the performers? I
saw a 6-man tag, and I mentioned this on the Take It to the Table. It was Sheamus and the Brawling Brutes against Imperium, and that was the best 6-man tag that I had seen like in years.
There you go. Why were you so cold then on the Creeds and Breaker?
They were actually tagging. They were actually not burying the referee, following the rules. But then again, you drift off that, well, this was a street fight. I don't know. I just think that all these guys are horrible, and I can't stand seeing them. Well, one thing that they have done that I would wish they would do it with somebody else is Kenny Omega, that the finish, that one wing angel. The one wing angel, if he hits it, you're done. That's one good thing I can say about it, because
the move's protected. It's over and it's protected. I agree with you on that. Like nobody kicks out of it.
I wish it was somebody else, but it just happens to be the tiptoe Kenny Omega.
I think it is an electric finisher though, and I like the way that they protected it. Right, you don't kick out of the one winged angel, and I do dig that.
So when it comes to the finish, I do like that because he hit it and it's over.
Yep.
Because they work towards it somewhat. They work towards it, and he hit it, and it's over. I did like that.
The one thing I want to quickly go back to is you just said a minute ago that you think that the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are bad for the business. To play at devil's advocate here, and listen, I'm not always a fan of their matches. A lot of time when they do the cringe stuff, I'm not really into that personally. I was a fan of a lot of what Omega did in New Japan, but the Young Bucks over the years has been hit and miss for me a lot of the time. But I cannot say that they've been bad for the business because they spark the motivation, they spark the flame for AEW to be created, and that's been so good for the wrestling business overall because it's brought in more jobs, brought more eyes, and it's brought competition, which we know is always good.
Look, well, and you know what even makes me more mad is that they've had good matches. When they want to be serious, they can be, like with FTR and that match they had at Revolution with Omega and Hangman. That was a good match. The matches with FTR are a good match, but they choose to just play wrestler and play heel, not be heels, play heels and be obnoxious and not take the business seriously and be on their YouTube show. Start a YouTube wrestling promotion. Do that, but just I don't know. I get tired of talking about these people. Do you have anything else to talk about today?
Well, we can talk about the other thing, and that is that Samoa Joe retained the the TNT Championship against Wardlow. A lot of people thought that Wardlow was going to win. Fightful Select
broke the hearts of all the female fans of AEW by cutting off Wardlow's top knot.
It was a very depressed moment, but Darby Allin then came out and made the save. So perhaps they're finally doing something with Darby Allin again, which is something I've been calling for now recently. But a lot of people thought that Wardlow was going to win. Fightful selected an article saying they thought he was, it was being discussed that he was going to win, and there was confetti ready to come down. But he didn't win. Samoa Joe won. At least they're not flip flopping. The title. I mean that is a good thing because they've done that a lot recently. But it's like, where does Wardlow go now from here? And it looks like Darby Allin's back in the title picture. What did you think about it, Anthony?
I mean, it's a shame kind of with Wardlow. They really have no idea what they're doing with him.
No.
They have him squash MJF. They have him hold the title, lose the title. I thought it spoke volumes, and I said this to Clark during the broadcast. Darby holding the TNT title. Why wouldn't he grab the Ring of Honor as well? Why would he only go for one of his two titles? Which I think is kind of a slap in the face to the Ring of Honor brand, whatever that means these days. Darby against Joe could be interesting. One of the best spots that I think Joe does and no one else does. I don't even know if there's a name for it, but he's done it for years. People go for a dive and he just walks out of the way. The famous Joe walk spot. I could see him doing that with Darby, especially with giving his style. So I think I'm interested in a Darby Joe feud because I think they could do some stuff with it because Darby puts himself through insane spots that I don't think he should do, but he does. So I think it could be interesting. I've always been a fan of, and Ignacio made mention of it, doing like flips just for the sake of doing them. I'm not a fan of that. I personally think you should do things that make sense, that move the story along, move the match along. You don't do it just for the sake of doing it. The Bucks are famous for the super kick. Doing 15 super kicks and not winning a match with it really devalues the move when you look at what Shawn Michaels did for the move. So that's always been a problem for me when I would hear, oh, Kenny and the Bucks, they're the greatest. I mean, I don't think they're the greatest. I don't think they're horrible either. I don't think they're, there's an audience for it, clearly.
There's a happy medium.
But, for me, I prefer doing things that make sense and build a story and carry. Everything builds to something else. So that's, I think Joe could get that out of Darby.
Yeah. No, I absolutely think that. In fairness, I don't think I can't even think back and remember now, but I swear the Usos were, at least before the Young Bucks were doing it, on like a major stage and even in Ring of Honor. I think the Usos were doing the super kicks first, to be fair, which
That I can't.
Everyone's doing super kicks these days, by the way. We're just splitting hairs at that point.
Yeah,
right,
I don't think. I do
Everyone's
agree with
doing
you
them now.
completely.
Yeah,
I do
everyone's
agree
doing
completely.
super
It's
kicks.
become an overused move, which is
No,
maybe
that's what I
fine.
mean.
It's my favorite move growing
overused.
up.
Yeah,
There's certain
I don't
moves that
love
everyone's
that
doing.
because HBK was my favorite. I think I've stated that in the past. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up a diehard HBK. I mean, WrestleMania 12 was my first ever show. Right, I was 5 years old, and he beats Bret Hart in the Iron Man match to win boyhood dream. Like, of course, I was an HBK guy, but I do think, and even we talked earlier about the One Winged Angel, right? Like, Sweet Chin Music was pretty damn protected, and that is the only thing that I think that's disappointing to me about all the super kicks is that it's just not a move that's anywhere near protected these days.
Well,
as far as its impact and from a storytelling perspective, it's a beautiful move, and I understand the audio on the leg slap. You get a good one, it sounds great. But it is absolutely overplayed. I wouldn't argue against that.
There are certain moves that it seems like everyone does these days. The super kicks one,
Yeah.
the crossface is another. I think the dive onto a group of people is so overdone these days. There's certain moves that I'm like, I don't know at what point everyone went, we all need to add this to our repertoire. I don't know.
Well, what did you think about the main event then last night, Ignacio, between Wardlow and Samoa Joe?
Well, I think Tony Khan finally started listening to somebody, because I think the interview Wardlow segment, whether it was a pre-tape or whatever, that was on right after the first match, correct? So it was within the first half hour of the show.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So whether it be segment 1 or 2, so that segment where Joe hit him with the pipe took place, and that was like, okay. So now we know these guys are going to be in the main event. So the viewers that you had at the top of the first or second segment, whether you keep them or not throughout the show, they're definitely going to be there at the end, because they want to see if is Wardlow going to make it? Are they going to have a replacement? Is he going to come on with a knee brace, whatever? But now you kept your viewership. So Tony Khan started listening to somebody. Now let's get.
We said it on the show yesterday, I think it was as well. Maybe Tony Khan watches the daily podcast.
It did provide some. I agree with you totally too. It kept you locked in. Like, I got to see this, right? What's the deal with Wardlow early? And I think even I don't know if you saw yesterday's show, but we were talking about how on Raw, right? Not Dynamite, but just if you can make the main event, make us want that last hour almost, right? It'll make the second hour go by faster, make the first hour go by faster, maybe even almost from an entertainment standpoint. To your point, pulling the audience in like that. And then you have to wait to get the answer. I'm in total agreement there, Ignacio.
Well, the problem was the bell rang, and then we got the afterbirth, because
okay.
Wardlow.
I wouldn't go that far, but
Wardlow,
he's rolling.
Yeah, Wardlow. he's selling the knee half the time, and then he puts Joe in the compromising position, and he's selling the knee hard, and then he goes up in the top rope, leaps up in one leap, then jumps off and do a moonsault, and I'm like,
But the logic was missing. You should have been selling it the whole time.
Moonsault with the bum knee. I completely agree, Ignacio.
This guy is still as green as goose shit, and not even Samoa Joe can help him. And then he goes to do the power bomb, and tries to get Joe up, and then he grabs the wrong knee. He forgot what knee to sell, and it's just like, I'm pretty sure if I was Samoa Joe, I would have went straight up to Tony Khan and said, I do not want to work with this dumb POS again. Please keep him away from me. It was terrible and embarrassing. But now the whole deal with the ponytail, that probably would have worked with Jungle Boy or MJF or somebody where kind of the hair is part of their character, but with Wardlow, it doesn't mean much. What he's going to come out wearing a flat top. I mean, what next week? What's the big deal? And then you have at the end, here I come to save the day, Mighty Mouse, Darby Allin, who I love Darby Allin, but Darby Allin coming to save Wardlow makes Wardlow look, they buried him, and it's a little guy. I like Darby Allin, but little guys. I'm not against the thing that where little guys can't beat up big guys. I think that's little guys beat up big guys all the time in real life.
Oh, no, it's very true. Yes.
So I'm not against that, but dude, big guys lose a lot in this company. Like, when's the last time you saw Lance Archer win a match?
Well, I mean, he's been working in New Japan. That's the only problem, too,
dude,
by the way.
and he's way over in Japan. But when he comes to AEW, when's the last time he won a match? It's just they lose a lot in this promotion. It's almost like if you try to do like a little guy versus big guy angle, well, the little guy's going to win because it's AEW, because big guys never win. So I don't know. I think this was.
What about Miro Darby last year for the TNT title? And like,
Right.
I don't know. I do think that I hear where you're coming from on the big guy, little guy debate. I also think it's a thinner roster as far as big guys than we've seen in recent memory. And I don't necessarily think that's AEW's fault based on the talent that they signed at the time.
To be fair, though, they haven't booked the big guys that they have well. So I think a lot of big guys have decided to not go to AEW.
Brody Lee, Miro, they've had plenty of big guys.
I think it's
Miro's a
Brody
little
Lee.
questionable now.
Now, of course, in hindsight, right? But I mean, there have been. I think we overlook how many times they actually have put over big guys in historically. I do agree, by the way, though, on that there does seem to be an emphasis on the smaller guys, for sure, in AEW. That exists. But I do think we do overlook every now and again when they put a bigger person over. And also, I think the talent pool of big guys in AEW, WWE, right? The big guy's a dime a dozen, right? I mean, Drew McIntyre looks like a medium-sized guy. He'd be gigantic in AEW.
They gravitate towards WWE.
McIntyre and Sheamus are giants in WWE. They look medium they're giants in AEW. They look medium in WWE. And I do think that kind of can play into some of that perception. But at the same time, I totally hear where you're coming from on the sometimes you got to have the big guy beat up the little guy just for continuity. And I can see where you're coming from on that, Ignacio, for sure.
Then that's because I do like Darby Allin because he's a smaller guy.
Yeah.
With the exception of so a lot of the guys in the like Starks and Ethan Page, like he worked with those guys in the indies. So they know his style. They know he lays his shit in. But I think maybe other people like have felt that torpedo suicide dive and felt like, well, fuck this guy. I don't want to work this. He's reckless. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe that's the issue. But yeah, I just think I didn't like the ending of this show. I didn't like the show in general. I think maybe it was probably one of their better shows, but this didn't look good for Wardlow. I didn't think it looked good for Samoa Joe. I don't know. I didn't like it at all.
Soul's just confirmed here that Samoa Joe versus Darby Allin will happen on Dynamite next week. That's the new Dynamite next week.
Oh yeah, with the rebrand, that'll be fun. To be honest, I am. I mean, I always think a rebrand's a little bit overblown. Like they change the colors and the set's going to change slightly or whatever. It's still the same product.
I always love with WWE with the season premieres. I'm like, you don't have an off season.
There's no week off.
So I always found that hysterical when they would go season premiere.
Yeah, season premiere. It's like, what? You just re-looped it. Fill it up again. New season time.
They don't do a season finale, so I don't like.
Yeah, there's no finale.
Actually, in fairness, they did last
this year. Actually, no, you're right, man.
They did do us one season.
Most of the time, they don't.
Yeah, they've never before. But to be fair to them, this year they did do one. But yeah, does anybody reckon Darby will actually win the title next week?
No,
I don't think so.
I could see Tony wanting to do it as a splash, having somebody win a belt during the rebrand. It's possible. I think it's 50-50 either way.
He gets screwed around in the finish. I think he gets real close, maybe hits a coffin drop or something. But then, some sort of muddy.
I could see a coffin drop into Joe submission.
Oh, that'd be interesting too. By the way, that'd be a cool spot. I didn't think about that.
That's happening.
Into a coquina clutch. Book it, Tony, if you're listening.
I could see them doing it where Darby doesn't tap, he passes out.
Right. Right. Of course.
I think you just called it completely correct there. But anyway, guys, it's coming up in an hour now, so I'm going to bring things to a close. Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening. Thank you for the comments we've had today. We've had a lot of comments. That's great. And tomorrow's episode, we're gonna have Laurie Taylor on to talk about the Lacey Evans situation. It's gonna be a really good podcast tomorrow. I'm really excited for it. And also then on Saturday, I think Ignacio is gonna be coming back to the show. And he's gonna be with I can't remember everybody who's on that show, but I know Clarky will be on there too.
I think it'll be me, Kobe, and is it Anthony or is it? I can't remember. Is it Soul?
I'm not. I think so. I think so. Yeah. So it's gonna be a reunion between Ignacio and Soul, and Clark's gonna be there too, and so is Kobe. It could get tense, but that's coming up on Saturday for you guys. It'll definitely be a good one. But yeah, tomorrow we got Laurie Taylor on to talk about the Lacey Evans situation, and it's going to be great. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m., I believe. But if not, keep an eye on the Instagram where I keep you guys updated.
I believe it's 11 a.m. Pacific, or is it noon Pacific tomorrow? Actually, I think it might be 8 tomorrow. Either way, we'll let you know.
We'll let you guys know on Instagram. Make sure to follow us on Instagram for all the updates. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.